Hello, you beautiful people, past, present, and yes, of those in the future, and today we're doing something just a little bit different. So, instead of playing a game, I actually wanted to show a project that I've been working on for, well, technically a few years now, but I'm just now finally getting into putting it to paper. So, what we're seeing here is the Watchers of Eternity Azure Neverland. For a bit of context, I've been playing in a certain D&D game for, I want to say, like a few years now. We finished up maybe a year ago, and it was probably one of my favorite D&D campaigns, mostly because of the characters that were present there. And, well, I didn't get to do too much with my player character, Saphira, which, you know, he's going to be introduced in this story. This is basically my retelling of that original campaign, starting with Saphira's backstory. So for context, Saphira was a tiefling, ranger rogue, and something else. I know ranger rogue was the two big things. I think it might have added fighter at some point, and basically he started off as a player character. We've gone through quite a few games. However, we've been kind of like transitioning several DMs. Because what I like to do is I like to give my players a chance to be the DM for a story, and because I was kind of burnt out from the campaign 2, I actually handed the reins over to someone who you know quite frequently, Tara. Yeah, Tara was our DM for the third section of this series of campaigns called the Chronicles of Sin, and basically, we talked it out, we've written Saphira's backstory, we went back and forth on ideas, and we pretty much gone through the story, for the most part, I want to say, maybe a third of it was me as an actual player, but then we switched, DMs because DM burnout, and then, you know, that DM got DM burned out, so I just ended up bringing the campaign back to myself as the DM, so I never really got the chance to flesh out Saphira's story too much. While he was a prominent character, and he did have, some wonderful moments that I hope to share with this, I'm putting everything to paper now, with the help of Tara, considering a lot of the original setting was based off his notes and everything. Is this the time we're going to see a golden alpaca? No, Titan, we're not doing a game today, buddy. We are reading my book that I've been writing for the past almost year, so something like that. I want to say I started writing maybe 2 or 3 months after the campaign ended, and then I hope it turns out remarkably well sooner. Oh, I should hope so. I mean, we're still in the early stages of the book. We're only 3 chapters in, but there's 39 or so pages, and we also have some art to go along with this. So, I'll show you guys here as soon as we get started, but for the most part, this is a retelling of my D&D character, Saphira Chrysler. And this is going to be a different version of that original tale, mostly because the backstory was just there to explain certain events that happened with the character, but going through and writing this entire backstory with a lot more detail, we're talking, I maybe had 2 or 3 paragraphs for his story originally. We had a beginning and end of that backstory, but now I gotta fill out all of that stuff into what I hope to be one of your guys' favorite stories, because it's one of my favorite stories. I mean, special thanks to Okami, Empty Milkies, Terra, these were all player slash DMs for our game. They are very important to the story, and we're not going to see Okami's or Jade's characters, appear in this story, at least not right now. I mean, that'll have to be for a different tale, but this is a very personal story that I'm really glad to get into. Let's go ahead and get started with this, So, here we go. I actually made this map myself using Incarnate, not sponsored or anything, but I really like how this turned out. I took the original drawing, Tara had a rough outline, a really rough outline of Herith. So this is a continent called Herith. It's a very small one, but basically, there's several different sections of it. Oh yes, I did. Yeah, Titan, I did make this map. I made this map using Incarnate. It took me maybe a couple of hours to fill it in. Saphira's already one of my hey Okami. Saphira's already my favorite D&D character. So I'm happy to read more of a story. Oh, absolutely. It's very interesting to see like where I go with Saphira's story because I got like you already know Okami. I have the idea. I have the beginning and I have the end of the backstory, and then we got everything that happens afterward. And this story is focusing more on the backstory portion of Saphira's story. We're talking like 4 years of a campaign that I have to like write out so many details for. Which, don't get me wrong, I really am glad that I get the opportunity to do this, but at the same time, there's a lot that I need to find a way to bridge the gap, which we'll see here in a bit. The most powerful way is Incarnate. Oh no, Incarnate is a website. Basically, you can go in, make personal maps. Like you can either make world maps or just battle maps, whatever need be. I paid for the subscription, so that way I have more options to work with. Can you draw characters? No, you can't draw characters, but they do have tons of preset assets, which you can go and because I think of it like putting stickers or like stamps on certain things. Like you stamp in certain things to make it look a certain way. And honestly, I really like how the map turned out. It is really nice. And this is just one section of Hearth. I don't know if we'll see the rest of here. This is south. Maybe scroll down just a little bit so you see the name. So this is southeast Hearth. So like most of the story, if not all of it, is going to be set place here in this location. Now I might add more to this map later on as the story gets written, but for the most part you got 3 main locations. You got Altivia, Mount, I'm gonna butcher this name, I'm so sorry Tara if you're watching this in the future, Mount Galahad, and then we got Hearth itself. Hearth is the main, like, I guess you could say it is the New York City of this particular area. I don't know how else to describe it. It's just one big city. Like it's like the cornerstone of Hearth, and it's like where a lot of future events will happen. But for the most part, we're going to stick with mostly Altivia. Now we might explore some things in Mount Galahad later on in the story, but for the most part, everything's going to be happening right here in the port city of Altivia. And we've got 3 chapters currently in this story. We've got Twisted Fates, Heart of Altivia, as well as Azure Neverland. What does all that mean? Well, let's go ahead and find out now. And guys, if you have any questions like about the characters or the setting, anything that I can elaborate on, do let me know, and then I can go ahead and just, answer them the best I can without spoilers. Now, we will get into the story now, as I go ahead and read this. So, Chapter 1, Twisted Fates. Let me go ahead and pull up chat on the set so that way I can, there we go. Fate has a way of putting you exactly where you need to be. Sometimes it's through the choices we make. Other times, it's the sheer happenstance of the world around us. My own beginning is a blur. A collection of secondhand stories and fragments I've pieced together over the years. Is there... No, Titan. No, this is... There will be dark elements, but it's not going to be anything too great. It's... I would say just what that's no Titan, no, we're not, no, this isn't that kind of story, Titan. This is a personal, I know what you mean, but this is not that kind of story. This is not that kind of adult story. Alright, now, there might be some relationships in the future. I don't know. Yes, I'll carry on. Alright. Maybe just start from the beginning. Fate has a way of putting you exactly where you need to be. Sometimes it's through the choices we make. Other times it's the sheer happenstance of the world around us. My own beginning is a blur, a collection of secondhand stories and fragments I've pieced together over the years. But there's one thing I know for certain. I was never meant to stay hidden. Yeah, I know I know what it means, Okami. It's just, I saw the second one. I saw whatever HET is. I don't know what that is. So I just made the assumption. And considering his next message afterward. It began on a storm-tossed night in late spring. Thick clouds blanketed the sky, their shadows swallowing the faint glow of the moon. Rain lashed against the straw roofs of Ortivia, a port town battered by howling winds and unrelenting crash of the sea. Shutters groaned and rattled under the assault, and the streets ran slick with water. No sane soul would venture out on such a night. Except someone did. A lone figure trudged through the storm, their silhouette obscured by layers of soaked fabric clinging to their frame. In their hands, they carried a basket. An oval wooden... I can't read. An oval cradle woven tightly from pale willow reeds. The wind tugged at the basket inside, revealing the face of a baby no more than a winter old. The infant was swallowed in a woolen cloth, its edges frayed but carefully tucked around the child. The figure paused before the orphanage, a weather-worn building with a sagging frame and a rusted iron door. Without hesitation, they set the basket down, placed a stone amulet in the basket, knocked sharply on the door, and vanished into the night. From the upper story of the orphanage, the matron, Cheryl Hodgins, heard the knock even through the howling wind. Cheryl was a kind yet no-nonsense woman with calloused hands and a warm, steady voice. When she opened it, the storm nearly ripped the shawl from her hands, but her gaze quickly dropped to the basket on the stoop. Her breath caught in her throat. The baby inside was unlike anything she had ever seen. She carried the basket inside, her steps hurried as the storm's chill bit at her heels. Setting it by the fireplace, she leaned down for a closer look. She recoiled instinctively, her heart pounding. The infant's skin was as blue as a clear summer sky, its tiny horns curved delicately around the sides of its head. When the baby stirred, its emerald eyes opened, gleaming like polished gems in the firelight. The tales whispered in the marketplace. The warnings of creatures born with infernal blood came rushing into her mind. A daling, they called them. Children marked by devils with unnatural features and powers no mortal can trust. Those warnings were staying in her eyes. I was staring into her eyes. The caretaker hesitated, her trembling hands hovering over the edge of the basket. Fear and curiosity warred within her. She went into the kitchen and reached for a mortar and pestle, gathering herbs and tonics to prepare for the worst. But as she worked, her gaze kept drifting back to the tiny figure near the fire, sleeping soundly despite the storm's despite the storm that raged outside. Perhaps she wondered, as I often do now, whether fate had chosen that moment to change the course of both our lives. As she sat down beside me, the caretaker was quiet, her thoughts a storm of doubts and worries. On the one hand, I was just a baby, barely at the beginning of my life. On the other hand, the old tales whispered of Dalings, harbingers of destruction who left ruin in their wake. Her mind churned with questions she couldn't silence. What if he grows up to harm others? What if he brings disaster to the town? Her fingers absently traced the edge of the basket, portraying her turmoil. The weight of the decision was heavier than anything she had ever faced, and she felt no certainty about the path ahead. Yet, as her gaze drifted back to the sleeping child, something stilled the chaos in her heart. My tiny chest rose and fell. My hands curled into soft fists, entirely unaware of the storm raging around me. Minutes stretched on as she wrestled with her conscience, the quiet room offering no answers, only the gentle crackle of the hearth. At last, she exhaled slowly, a sound almost like a prayer. Rising to her feet, she carefully lifted the basket and carried me up to the creaking staircase to the upper floors. There she found an old crib, one of the few that had been left empty for that season. She tucked me in a thick blanket ensuring the storm was warm enough, ensuring the room was warm enough to shield me from the night's chill. For a moment, she hesitated, standing over me as I slept peacefully. Her doubts hadn't entirely vanished, but in that moment, she allowed herself to hope. Leaning down, she whispered softly, as if speaking directly to the gods themselves. The gods must have sent you here for a reason. If it's for the better, only time will tell. Due to her faithful decision, I was able to call that orphanage my home. The orphanage in Altivia was both a sanctuary and a crucible. Children of all ages ran and played in the sprawling yard, their laughter echoing against the worn stone walls of the building. For most, it was a piece of solace, where they find camaraderie and shared misfortune. But for me, it was a battleground. For the moment I arrived, the whispers began. That's the demon child, they would say, the voices barely hushed. Say away, or you'll end up cursed! Some children avoided me altogether, their eyes wide with fear when I crossed their path. Others were more vocal in their disdain. They point at my horns, small and curved but impossible to hide, and call me monster or devil spawn. As I grew up, the rumors about me began to spread like a wildfire. One boy, eyes alight with mischief, told the younger children that if they played with me, they'd grow horns or tails of their own. Another girl swore she'd seen my eyes glow red at night. Though I knew that was true, my eyes can shift colors as I see fit. The stories grew more ridiculous by the day, but the damage was done. I was alone, marked as something other, something dangerous. There were nights when the isolation felt unbearable. I sit by the window of the small, drafty room I shared with the other boys, staring out at the stars and wondering if they were as lonely as I was. It was in those moments that Cheryl would often find me. I never noticed the moments of hesitation in her actions towards me. She treated me as the same as any other child under her care. She never addressed me by name. At the time, I haven't been given one, nor did I think much of it. Instead, she would call me Day. I didn't take offense, though I would later learn the word's meaning. She'd sit beside me, her presence a quiet comfort. The stars don't seem so far away when you're looking at them with someone, do they? She'd say, her gaze soft but searching. At first, I didn't trust her kindness. She was human, after all, and humans had made it I can't even read. She was human, after all, and humans made it clear that what they thought of me. But Cheryl was persistent. She asked me about my day, her tone always gentle, even when the answer was nothing. Over time, she began to open up as well. I'll be honest with you, Day, she said one night, her voice low so the other children wouldn't hear. When you first came here, I wasn't sure about you. I thought you might bring trouble, maybe even danger. It wasn't much different from what the children think now. Her words stunned, but she held up a hand before I could respond. But then I got to know you. I see how you watched out for the younger ones, even when they didn't ask for your help. I see how you stayed up late to clean up after the other boys, even when they made a mess just to spite you. And I realized something. You're not a Daeling to me. You're just a child. A child who deserves the same chance at happiness as any of the others. Her words stayed with me, a fragile light in the darkness. Cheryl told me that not everyone was driven by fear or hatred. She'd tell me stories of heroes who'd overcome great odds, reminding me that my own circumstances don't define me. You'll find your place, Day, she said once, her hand resting lightly on my shoulder. Not everyone will see you for who you really are, but some will. And those are the people who matter. But even with Cheryl's guidance, the orphanage remained a difficult place. I learned to move silently through the halls, avoiding the other boys who looked for any excuse to pick a fight. I learned to hide my anger, knowing it would only fuel theirs. Most of all, I learned to survive, carrying Cheryl's words like a shield against the cruelty of the world, forming a mask for my emotions to hide behind. Cheryl often shielded me from the stares and hostility of other children. Sometimes her efforts worked, but other times they didn't. She tried to teach me restraint, urging me to ignore the looks and the hateful words. It's not worth it, she'd say, but ignoring such things is easier said than done. To escape the stress of the orphanage, I often snuck out to the woods west of Altivia. Towering trees cast long shadows, blotting out the sun in some places, while the forest floor was a patchwork of soft moss and twisted roots. The woods were quiet, save for the occasional rustle of leaves or the chirp of a bird flitting between the branches. It was here, amidst this stillness, that I found a sense of peace and purpose. One day, while exploring deeper into the forest, I stumbled upon a group of hunters. They moved through the underbrush with practiced ease, the boots leaving barely a trace on the forest floor. From the cover of a thicket, I watched them closely, my breath held to avoid detection. The movements were deliberate, calculated. One hunter crouched low, scanning the ground for tracks, while another gestured silently to his companions. I marveled at their discipline, their silent communication, and their ability to blend seamlessly into the environment. For days after, I followed the hunters at a distance, studying their methods. I watched how they checked for snapped twigs or disturbed foliage, how they used the wind to mask their scent, and how they worked together to corner their prey. Excuse me. Okay, where was I? I mimicked their movements when I was alone, practicing how to walk without a sound and how to read the forest as they did. Eventually, I did decide to put what I had learned to the test. Taking down a boar, I thought, would be a challenge worthy of recognition. If I can bring one back, the village will have to see me see that I'm not just some cursed child. I'll prove to them that I am capable, that I belong. On this particular day, I had tracked a massive boar through the woods. Its tracks were fresh, leading to a clearing where the animal foraged among the underbrush. Its curved tusks gleamed like daggers in a dappled light, and its bulk made it look like a living mountain. I crouched low, my bow in hand, an arrow nocked and ready. The wood of the bow creaked softly as I drew it back, aiming for the beast's side. My heart thundered in my chest, each beat driving me forward. Just as I was about to release the arrow, a strong arm yanked me back. The boar bolted into the thicket, startled by the commotion, and I was thrown off balance, landing hard on the ground. Glancing over my shoulder, I caught a glimpse of my attacker, a boy about my age, likely from Altivia. He had short, slicked back brown hair and wore fine clothes that marked him as wealthy. A club dangled from his belt. Two other boys flanked him, each looking just as well off and just as smug. He and the other boys grabbed me and pinned me to the ground. I heard there was a demon haunting these woods, the leader sneered, his voice laced with arrogance. Looks like the rumors were true. Let me go, I yelled, thrashing like a cornered animal. Poor choice of words. He and the other boys shoved me forcefully against a tree. Pain exploded through my skull as I felt one of my horns crack. I tried to fight back, but the agony dulled my senses, leaving me overwhelmed. Then came a sharp thud. The leader staggered forward, clutching the back of his head. Another stone whizzed through the air and struck the ground near his feet. Leave him alone! A girl's voice rang out. The boys turned towards the source of the voice. On a small ridge stood a girl with long brown hair. her fierce gaze daring them to challenge her. She held a handful of stones and hurled another one at them. "If you don't stop, I'll make sure my father hears about this," she said, her voice commanding. The leader hesitated, recognition flickering in his eyes. He muttered something under his breath before waving his friends away. "Let's go. Leave the Daling to his keeper." They left, but not without casting venomous glares in my direction. Dizzy and in pain, I stumbled against the tree. My vision blurred, my limbs felt heavy. The girl scrambled down the ridge and knelt beside me, her expression softening with concern. "Are you alright?" she asked. "Yeah, just hurt. I'll live," I muttered, though my attempt to stand proved otherwise. "Hold on," she said gently. "Let me help." She began tracing strange gestures in the air, her hands glowing with soft white light. Warmth spread through me, and the pain faded. Even the crack of my horn mended as if it had never been there. "What was that?" I asked, staring at her in awe. "A basic healing spell called Curie," she explained, examining me for any remaining injuries. "What's your name?" "The caretaker calls me Day, but I really don't have a name. Who are you?" "I'm Elise Chrysler. My father is the overseer of Altivia." "Well, thanks for the help, Elise," I said, brushing myself off. "But I had it under control." "It didn't look like that from where I stood," she replied with a teasing smile. Ignoring her jab, I grabbed my bow and turned back towards the woods. I've got a boar to catch." "Wait!" she called, rushing to block my path. "What if those boys come back? At least let me take you to Altivia. Our clerics can check you over in case my spell didn't fully heal you." "Why are you helping me?" I asked, my voice tinged with disbelief. "I'm a Daling. If I set foot in town, people will attack me just like those boys did." "You were being hurt. That's reason enough," she said firmly. Then after a pause, she added, "I was taught that if someone was in trouble and you had the means to help, then you should help." Taking my hand, she smiled. "Don't worry, I'll protect you." Reluctantly, I let her guide me back towards the bridge leading to Altivia. As we approached, she glanced at me thoughtfully. "You said you don't have a name," Elise said, her expression softening as she studied me thoughtfully. "May I give you one?" I hesitated, unsure how to respond, but eventually I gave a slight nod. "Sure, why not?" As Elise stood there, her eyes moving over me with a mix of curiosity and uncertainty, I couldn't help but feel exposed, like I was being examined piece by piece. I guess I can't blame her. I'm not exactly the easiest person to name. First, there's my skin, sky blue, deep and vibrant. The kind of shade that stands out no matter where you are. Then there are the horns. They curve along the side of my head, dark and smooth, like something out of a tale meant to scare children into behaving. I know they make me look different. Some people find them intimidating, but to me, they're just another part of who I am. And my eyes. Green, like polished emeralds or leaves after a storm. They've always caught the light in strange ways, drawn people's attention whether I wanted them to or not. At least lingered on them for a moment, as if searching for something, but I wasn't sure what. Finally, there's the tail. It swayed behind me, restless as always, with a blue flame at the tip glowing faintly. It's not like a normal fire. It doesn't give off heat or burn anything, but it's alive, constantly flickering like it has a mind of its own. If my horns didn't make people cautious, the tail is what sealed the deal. Elise tilted her head, her lips pressing together in thought. I could tell she was trying to figure me out, to match me with a name that would fit. But how do you name someone who spent his whole life feeling like he doesn't belong? Still, I waited. watching her watch me, and hoping just a little that she'd see something beyond what everyone else did. How about Saphira? Saphira? I echoed, tilting my head. Yes, she said, a gentle smile forming. You remind me of the blue skies when it gets dark. I can't even read. You remind me of the blue skies I see when it's getting dark. The way the colors deepen and shift just before the stars come out. I blinked, taken aback by her words. It wasn't what I had expected, but there was warmth in the name that felt right. After a moment, I nodded, this time with more certainty. Saphira. I like it. And this is our boy right here, Saphira. Honestly, this is one of the earliest drawings I had done for Saphira. I made this right as I was making the character for the D&D game. Back then, I had a different last name, which, you know, he doesn't have a last name right now, but he actually had a last name that was vastly different than what we would finally draw on. When I sent the initial backstory to Tara, he's like, yeah, maybe we should change the last name. It's kind of hard to pronounce. I always have a habit of adding names that sound cool, but it's hard to pronounce. I don't know why I have that sort of habit, and you might see it in these next couple of chapters, but for the most part, Saphira as a character concept, like, I'm still proud of what this art, like, represents going forward. Just like this, granted, this is more of a technically a later drawing, but you can probably suspend your disbelief and say, hey, this is at least Lisa's drawing of Saphira, like, maybe the day or two after she's met him, because it kind of does, it looks nice, and I think the only thing I would probably change about this image is probably the neck wrappings, like the scarves and everything that's there, but for the most part, I really am proud of this particular drawing, and I'm very surprised that I have managed to find a way to because this was hand-drawn. This was a hand-drawn picture, and just to bring it over digitally very easily, I'm really happy that it managed to be part of the book. And we've even had some, we also made some pick crews, and we've used some free tools to better illustrate what he looks like. I also made a Baldur's Gate 3 version of Saphira, though at the time, this was before Baldur's Gate 3 had a full release, so options were very limited. But I remember he was one of the first characters I actually played in that game, and I think I still kept true with the classes that he was in the original story. Like, at this point of the story, I would say he's leaning more towards Ranger. Of course, he's a kid. He doesn't really have that much experience yet, but you can see, like, he's very quick to learn. Like, you give him time to understand something, and he's gonna try his best, and he will adapt quickly to it. And so now, in terms of, like, this news character, Elise, she is the secondary protagonist in this story. Like, this Azure Neverland is pretty much both Saphira's story and Elise's story. They're both the main protagonists of this tale, as you'll see in the later chapters. They really do complement each other, and, like, through their shared connections, they'll be able to, you'll see that it's man, I can't even speak. It's very weird to see now, like, all of this coming to light. But that is just chapter 1. We still got 2 more chapters left. He is simultaneously very smart and also very dumb. Oh yeah, he is a dumbass. He knows his stuff. Like, I think his original intelligence was like maybe a 14. So he knows his stuff, but his charisma is what was holding him back. Because, yeah, he might know a thing or two, but he doesn't know how to express it in a way. I mean, his wisdom wasn't even that bad either. He can learn stuff as well. He is very maybe not very perceptive, but he's perceptive enough. But when it comes to anything social, he is clueless. Like, I mean, understandably so. Like, Elise is outside of Miss Hodgins. Elise is now technically the first person who has ever showed him any sorts of kindness, like someone his own age showing him kindness. So this is a new experience for him, and this trait of Saphira is going to carry on with many characters, as we'll see. Like he is willing to like share a friendship with whoever, but you have to be a real special person in order for him to actually open up, you know, about himself. But now we got chapter 2, and as we'll be playing in about 17 minutes, so when we get to the 9:30 mark, I'll probably we'll go to ads and then we'll finish up. Because now that I think about it, I don't even know if we'll be able to finish all 3 chapters. But that'll be safe for another day, because after this I'm going to be jotting down notes for chapter 4, and yeah. So let's go ahead and continue, shall we? Chapter 2, Heart of Altivia. Now, this is one of the newer images that we got for Chapter 2. Before we actually get into the story itself, I really love how this turned out. I really wanted to give a hand-drawn feel to, like, the images, because everything you see here, image-wise, like, in a meta sense, these are Elise's drawings later on. That Saphira would, because this is Saphira's story being told by Saphira, from his best recollection and his own experience, and like he has taken Elise's drawings and actually incorporated it into his own journal or book, but I haven't really decided whether or not he's actually writing this as a way to, you know, document his life, or is it just like a personal journal that he has written down. But for the most part, story-wise, these are Elise's drawings, and she is a very talented artist. She is able to do so much for, like, to express her home, the people that she's connected with, and even some of the events that you all will see for this. So, Heart of Altivia. Elise walked through the bustling city of Altivia. For the first time, I was walking through town in broad daylight. Wandering at night was one thing. No one to stare, no one to shout. But now, with the streets alive and buzzing, every footstep felt like I was walking across broken glass. I could feel the stares pressing against my back, cold and sharp. Some faces twisted in scowls, others turned away as if I carried a plague. And then came the whispers just as loud to catch the wind. "Oh, fight Bruna!" And worse, words meant the wound. Too far. Elise didn't flinch. She met their gazes with sharp glances of her own, her head held high. Ignored them entirely, focusing instead on just me. "How much do you actually know about Altivia?" she asked, flashing a curious smile over her shoulder. "Not much," I admitted, pulling my hood lower. I've lived here all my life, but this part has always been closed off to me. Anytime I got near, someone either ran or tried to drop me off like I was some kind of beast. Elise stopped, faced to turn me, and smiled wider. Then, without warning, she grabbed my hand and pulled me forward. "Then today's a fresh start. There's so much to show you. Where should we start first?" Alright, and this section, you know, a little bit of a pause in the story. So this next section describing Altivia, this is coming from Terra himself. Since Altivia is his location, and he's also the editor for this story, I had him write this particular section here. And honestly, I think he did a very good job describing Altivia as a whole. Altivia, A bustling city near the ocean. A port town where we get loads of travelers and merchants from all around the world to sell their wares or prepare for their next big adventure. In the daytime, it's usually pretty lively in the streets, with transactions happening at every corner and a chaotic but weirdly organized energy to it all. It took me months to be able to map out the area. From my understanding so far, there are several different districts for shopping or activities, and people seem to live across all of them. In some areas, there are only merchants for just armor and clothing, while other places have schools for non-orphan children and parks with green pastures. One of the kids at the orphanage said that there's a beach near the port. I didn't know what that was, but Miss Hodgins gave me a book to read once that said it was a place with small rocks and sapphire water that can heal any wounds. Where is that? Oh, here you go. I wonder if Elise has read that book too. Either way, I hope one day I'll be able to see the beach. As we wove through the streets, Elise glanced back at me, her brow furrowed in thought. Like something didn't quite add up. By the way, what were you doing out in the woods all by yourself? I tried to look at her, adjusting my pace to keep up. I could ask you the same thing. She was fast, weaving through the alleyways and cutting between buildings like she'd lived her whole life mapping these streets. Just when I thought I knew where we were going, she'd take another turn, throwing me off. It was only later that I realized that she was picking these paths for my sake, keeping me out of view. She glanced back again, catching the nerves I tried to hide. No, I asked you first, she said, grinning as she stepped into a narrow dirt path between two houses. Those words aren't exactly friendly. There are monsters out there. Wild animals too. You know that, right? She paused, giving me a moment to answer. I rested my hand against the bow slung across my chest. I told you, I was tracking a boar. I've seen hunters go after them. If they can do it, why can't I? For a moment, she was quiet. Then she burst out laughing, trying and failing to stifle it behind her hand. Wait, you were serious about that? Boars are dangerous even for grown hunters. And you... She shook her head, still chuckling. You're lucky it was Sigmund and his lackeys who found you first. That boar would have flattened you in seconds. Let's go down. She wiped a tear from her eye, finally composing herself. Then her gaze softened, studying me with quiet sincerity. I figured those boys were up to something shady, so I followed them. That's why I was there. I wasn't sure what to think. Anyone else would have left me to them, or worse, to the creatures lurking in the woods. But at least she hadn't. There was no fear in her voice, no disgust in her eyes. Aside from Miss Hodgins, she was the only person who ever looked at me with anything close to kindness. Was this a trick? Was she pitying me? I didn't know. The questions tangled in my mind, but her voice was warm, her eyes soft. Maybe, just maybe, she was sincere. Elise fell silent for a moment, slowing her steps so I could catch up. She glanced at me sideways, like she was trying to figure me out. I hope you don't mind me asking, she said, tilting her head. But what are you exactly? You look human, but you've got horns and a tail. I've never seen anyone like you before. I rested my hand against the bowstring on my chest. Miss Hodgins says I'm a Daling. That's why she calls me Day. I didn't really know much more than that. Oh, I really don't know much more than that. From what I hear around the village, it's supposed to mean something bad. She stopped, turning to face me fully, her brows drawn in concern. You don't look bad to me. I think your horns are neat. Like, maybe part goat, part lizard. Something unique. I dropped my gaze to the dirt beneath my feet. Only one thought came to mind. Oh, I could be a monster. Without warning, she gently punked me on the forehead with her knuckles. Boop. I blinked up at her in surprise, and she smiled wide. Monsters are big and scary. You're just a kid. You're just like me, a kid. She turned her face to the sky, watching as the clouds drifted by. We share the same sky, the same land, and it's ours to explore how we want. Come on, we're almost at my place. With that, she dashed ahead. Hey, wait up! I shouted, chasing after her. For the first time in my life, I wasn't running away from someone. I was running towards them. She was my first friend. Elise and I reached the Chrysler estate. For a long moment, I could only stare. It was like stepping into another world, one I had never imagined. Everything here felt bigger, sharper, heavier, like the air itself carried the weight of something important. Parts of it were familiar. The timber walls, the scent of salt and pine on the wind, but everything else, the size of it. The way the estate stood above the town, like it was watching over it. All of that was foreign to me. I didn't know whether to feel small or simply out of place. The estate towered over the town like a vigilant guardian, perched on a gentle rise where the breeze carried the scent of salt and pine. Its walls, constructed from rough timber and gray stone, stood out against the morning fog. A solid fortress amid a landscape of small withered homes that clung to the slope below. A lofty wooden barricade surrounded the enclosure, pointed logs jutting outwards like the quills of a slumbering creature. Beyond its entrance, the soft sound of horses' hooves and the chatter of people floated down the hill, as carts filled with roughly hewn timber and casks of preserved fish moved through the uncovered courtyard. Wisps of smoke spiraled gently from a tall stone chimney, blending with the mist from the morning sea that drifted in from the port. The house itself rose high with two tall stories. Its steep shingled roof darkened from years of rain and sea spray. The upper story extended slightly beyond the lower one, held up by sturdy beams intricately carved with knotwork and faded emblems, representations of an ambition still expanding within its structure. At the center, above the entrance to the main hall, hung a withered crest, a pair of crossed swords laid over a saw blade. On one edge of the estate, a stone watchtower stood tall, resembling a finger directing attention towards the forest road. Its slender windows constantly searching for dangers from both land and sea. Opposite it, a modest stable with a forge emitted smoke and clamor, where horses pawed at the ground and blacksmiths shaped iron for cart axles and spearheads. The trail ascending from the village was hardly more than compacted earth and scattered stones, smoothed out by the feet of sailors, labor leaders, and aspiring practitioners, hoping to gain the overseer's attention. Elise opened the heavy doors of the estate and gestured for me to step inside. Mr. Northam should be in today. He's our best cleric. He'll check out that horn of yours, just in case my magic did fix everything. I hesitated. Stepping over that threshold felt strange. Like I was breaking into some place I didn't belong, even though Elise had invited me. What would this Mr. Northam be like? Would he treat me like Elise did? Or like the rest of the town? I told myself to stay on guard, just in case. Excuse me. The main hall smelled of smoke, sawdust, and salt air that slipped in through the narrow shutters. Merchants argued over prices while guards sharpened their weapons beneath heavy beams, their darkened wood scarred by years of firelight. Old banners and rusted swords hang beside worn maps of forests and trade routes, each one telling stories of battles fought and bargains struck. At least led me to a small room on the left side of the hall, near the entrance. The infirmary was quiet and neat, lined with 2 rows of beds and bookshelves stuffed with thick tomes I could not begin to understand. At the far end, writing something on a scroll, stood a man I guessed to be Mr. Northrum. He was tall, easily 6 feet, with long silver hair pulled back into a simple ponytail. His ears tapered to sharp points, and his eyes held a kind of calm distance, serene but hollow, like they were staring past you instead of at you. He wasn't like the others in town. He didn't look entirely human, though most of them could pass as one, or pass for one. Something about him felt different. Or maybe that was just my fear, twisting everything again. The moment he noticed us, he paused, lowering his quill. His gaze flickered over me, not cruel, but curious. Like I was something new, something strange that he wasn't sure whether to be wary of or simply intrigued by. Mr. Northrum gave Elise a welcoming, if slightly puzzled look. Good morning, Miss Elise. What brings you here? He glanced over at me, his gaze cool and unreadable. And who's this?
This is Saphira. He got hurt earlier, and I was hoping you could take a look at his horn. I tried using the spell you taught me, but I thought it'd be best to double check.
With a wave of his hand, a pair of woven stools slid across the floor towards us. A faint, translucent hand shimmered like smoke, retrieving a few tools from a nearby shelf as Northrum leaned in to examine me. I flinched slightly as the lens touched my horn. A faint ache pulsed from the fractures, and I could feel each shift of his tool like a cold breeze along my skin. Minor microfractures, but nothing severe. He murmured, adjusting the lens. Slight nerve strain. No ruptured vesicles. He rose smoothly across the room, plucking a small bottle from his desk. The liquid inside shimmered deep red, sealed with a cork. Give me 1 second. Okay, we got 2 minutes before an ad, so we can probably get through this page. Da-da-da. Drink this. It should dull the pain shortly. I eyed the bottle weirdly. The liquid looked like thin blood and smelled sweet, in a way that made my stomach turn. At least nudged me with a grin.
Don't worry, it's safe.
She stifled a laugh behind her hand. I hesitated. After everything else today, what was one more risk? I took a breath and drank. The taste hit like sour berries soaked in copper. I gagged, barely keeping it down.
It'll just turn you into a pot of plants,
Elise said sweetly.
It'll do what?
She burst into laughter, rocking on her stool. Even Northrum chuckled softly. Though there was something unsettling about the way it echoed in the quiet room. He gave Elise a sideways glance. I've already made sure you didn't tamper with this batch, Miss Elise. And just like that, a new, far more disturbing thought crossed my mind. Had she actually turned someone into a potted plant before? And before we continue with this, we are going to go take ourselves a little break. So go ahead and get yourself a snack and a nice little drink, and we'll be right back after these messages. We are more back. We are more back. We are back with more of the story, and I gotta figure out where I left off. I left off on the potted plant. Yeah, here we go. I'll just read that last one again. And just like that, a new, far more disturbing thought crossed my mind. Did she actually turn someone into a potted plant before? Mr. Northrum continued to examine me further, taking note of the flame at the end of my tail. Now this is certainly interesting. The flame at the end of your tail is emanating arcana, which is very unusual to see in Daylings. He said as he watched me. He said as he watched the flame flicker. It was at this point I had paid close attention to him. My curiosity had increased as he was observing me. You know what I am? Of course. Though your people are few and far between. He grabs a tome from one of the nearby bookshelves, or bookcases, and flicks through the pages, trying to find something. After a few moments, he stops and reads what is in front of him. Born from the... He stops and takes a look at me, as if trying to restrain himself. Union of human and demon. These people share traits of both... I can't read. These people share traits of both while inheriting the resilience to withstand fire and various other minor magical effects. These effects differ depending on the heritage of the Dayling. I was left confused. Half of what he was saying was cryptic to me, and it was like he was just making up words to make him sound a certain way. To put it in layman's terms, you are half demon and half human. Fire does not do much to you depending on who your parents are. And I can't read. Fire does not do much to you, and depending on who your parents are, you will have more abilities. To better understand these abilities, I would need to know what kind of Dayling your parents were. There wasn't much to say about who my parents were. Even if I did know, I didn't think it would help me in a way that will help Mr. Northrum understand who I am. My parents gave me up at the orphanage as a baby. I don't know anything about them. Disappointed, but Mr. Northrum continued. I see. There was a look on his face that showed that he shouldn't have asked that. Either way, the most curious thing certainly is your tail. I can probably do some research for similarities in other Daylings later and then give you a better explanation. There it is. Elise wrapped her arms around Mr. Northrum in a hug.
Thank you, Mr. Northrum. Come on, Saphira, there's one other place I want to show you before the night comes.
She started heading towards the door with me following not far behind. Just a minute, Miss Elise, he said while holding up a sheet of parchment. Your father asked me to continue the lesson from the other day about spell components. Be sure to come back tomorrow morning for that lesson. We would want to finish that before he comes back. She gave him a quick, almost dismissive wave.
Don't worry, I'll make sure I'll be there.
It was then that we both exited the room. The main hall was quieter now, with only a few people still lingering. Elise guided me to the opposite end of the estates, to the gardens outside. There were many types of flowers, all aligned and sorted throughout the area. The sun was starting to set, which gave the area a nice orange hue. Many wooden benches and tables were scattered and placed in places that were properly arranged to co-align with the flowers. A large stone water fountain sits as the centerpiece of the garden. Elise turns to me and rests against the fountain.
How are you feeling?
Conflicted. I was mostly fine now. The peace of this garden made it easy to take in everything. This was the most calm I have felt up until this point.
I'm fine. A lot better than what I was earlier,
I said while resting next to the fountain. This was a lot to take in. Just moments ago, I was getting attacked by people who wanted me dead. But now I'm feeling a sense of belonging with someone who has shown me the kindness and care that I have never seen before.
Why are you being so nice to me?
I said while leaning up against the fountain. She took a while to answer. It was as if she was also deep in thought. Why was she being so nice to me? She turned around to face the fountain, staring into the water below.
Can't someone do nice things and not have a reason for it?
It's not that I'm not thankful. You're already doing so much for me. I just can't understand why you're going out of your way to help me. She closed her eyes for a few moments as if she was trying to find the words to say within her mind. Her expression grew sadder. This would be the first time all day that I've seen her like that.
To tell you the truth, I guess I feel kind of alone sometimes too. People act like they know me, but they really don't see me.
She looked up and turned to face me, keeping her hands close to herself.
Everyone here knows who I am, but I feel alone sometimes. The other kids in town only want to be my friend because I'm a Chrysler. They don't really see me.
She picks up a pebble that was broken off from the fountain and toys with it in her hand.
When I saw you again beat up, I couldn't stand by and let them continue. You couldn't defend yourself. You had no one. And when I learned more about you, I could see that you were being treated unfairly. They saw you as something you're not.
She stares deeply into the water, watching the small waves made by the cascading flood that entered the fountain.
When I chose a name for you, I wanted to give you a name that showed who you really were. Saphira comes from sapphire, the gem. It's rare, strong, just like you, even if most people can't see it yet.
She turns to me with a slight smile on her face.
It also means beautiful. You might look menacing on the outside, but I can see in your eyes that you have a beautiful soul.
I didn't know what to say. She was lonely too? She did all of this because she thought I was beautiful? What does that mean? Coming from her, I knew it meant something good. Something that had meaning. I took a good look at her and smiled back.
If I had to be honest as well, I have never felt more safe before in my life. That feeling of being safe might not last if you were around me, though,
I said as I turned away to look at the water. She grabs my hand.
Well, then I guess we'll have to keep each other safe, huh?
She gave a smile, so bright it rivaled the stars that were starting to appear in the sky.
Come on, I know a good place where we both can feel safe. Where's that? A secret hideout.
I smiled. For the first time, I wanted to believe a place like that could exist. And that was chapter 2. This was a more, I guess, an emotional chapter. Like let me just get the small tidbits here. So we learned a little bit about what Saphira was doing in that forest. First and foremost, hunting a boar. And funny enough, as I was writing, I think this section, Okabe, if you're still in here, it was you that pointed out about the boar. And I'm like, oh, wait a minute. No, people have trouble hunting boars as it. Saphira would not be able to hunt a boar at all. And so it kind of gave me the inspiration to be like, yeah, he's going to. That's why he was there. He was so confident in his abilities that he's like, you know what? I'm gonna hunt a boar. And it's kind of funny what Okabe said. I think it was afterwards. She compared it to one of her other, not compared it, but she mentioned in a viewpoint of one of her other characters. As her character, she was surprised that, Saphira actually went out to hunt a boar. You don't mess with boars. Oh, absolutely. You don't mess with boars. I wasn't really thinking about it at the time, mostly because I was writing the draft of it. But then I just thought, you know what? That's a Saphira move. Like, hey, I'm confident in my skills. I can hunt a boar. I'm strong. I can do this. Look, if hunters can do it, why can't I? And so Elise was right to say, no, you can't. You're lucky that it was just those boys that ended up, hurting you and not the boar. But we also got to learn a little bit more about Elise this chapter and kind of like why she even helped Saphira to begin with. I mean, she is a lonely child as well. Kind of a opposite factor of Saphira. Saphira is like lonely because people essentially hated him for who he was, or who he is, like the outside appearance of it. While Elise is the opposite. People love Elise, but they don't really see her. They see the name. Oh, she's a Chrysler child. She is important. Let's be friends with her. Let's be kind to her because she's a Chrysler. And that sense of loneliness can really creep up on people too. And they have that common goal where they both feel lonely in a world where they just don't get seen as who they are. Oh, I accidentally hit my microphone. And so they both have that shared connection. And I already had this written down as I was writing the explanation as to why she named him Saphira, but as I was writing this down, Skull Servant, one of our newest community members in our Discord, was reading over chapter 1, and I can't remember what it was, but he was pointing out the fact that Saphira is typically, the Saphira as the name, is typically used for women. It's a woman's name, or it's a woman's name. And then, like, I went on to explain how, like, yes, it's typically used, to describe women, it's a woman name given to women. But in terms of this, I like giving characters names meanings. Like, Saphira's name meaning beautiful, like, at least gave him the name Saphira because she thought he was beautiful. Like, he had a beautiful soul, that he wasn't who he was on the outside. He was, like, she saw something that not many people noticed. Like, the only other person that actually noticed that he was any semblance of good was probably Miss Hodgins. And even then, she even had her reservations given the story she's heard about Daylings, which we'll get into, like, maybe not this stream or even in chapter 3, but more later on when we learn about the Daylings and, like, why they're such a big, boogeyman, essentially. And then another minor factoid about chapter 2 is that we were introduced to Mr. Northrum. Mr. Northrum is an entirely new character to this backstory, who is a reference to an NPC in our 1950s college game. Basically, there's a character called Miss Leah Northrum, who is also a cleric of Shar. She's very monotone, she's very kind. She's very monotone, but think of her like the very chill teacher, very chill housewife that is also stoned out of her mind all the time. That's kind of the idea I thought given, oh hey, this is just a family trait. They're all elves that are just so calm, so kind, but also kind of weird at the same time. Whereas Mr. Northrum here, he's a very curious man. He's also a cleric, like, obviously not a cleric of Shard, but, like, he's a different cleric that we'll find out, later on, like, as I'm writing this out, but he's definitely different than other characters, and yes, he is a elf in this story. He is very much an elf in this story. So elves are a thing, along with humans, so that's good. There's the only reason why I'm calling, like, Saphira Dayling is because I think Tiefling is a D&D word, and, like, to avoid any confusion with D&D. Not to mention, Dayling sounds interesting. It's, like, for me, it sounds like a very interesting name to give a half-demon person. It's still a tiefling-esque, but there's other elements to it that I'm adding, like the fire, the tail, and some other things that we'll find out later that kind of differentiate himself from his tiefling counterparts from the D&D games that we played. But we got one more chapter to get through, and this chapter is going to be a doozy. This is going to be the like, one of the bigger ones, and one of my personal favorites right now. as it kind of like cements it gives the title of the story its name, like, and the reason why it's called the way it's called. Chapter 3, Elise's Neverland. Elise and I made our way through the northern woods, heading towards her so-called secret hideout. The sun was starting to set when we were moving through the dense overgrown alleys and half-collapsed footbridges. The wind rustled the leaves overhead, and the faint scent of salt and old moss clung to the air. I was familiar with these woods, however this path Elise was guiding me through was something that I hadn't noticed up until now. What could this secret place be? A cave that was hidden in the hills? Thoughts like these filled my mind, and had gotten me a bit excited to see where she was taking me. As we were climbing the hill that led to a break in the forest, Elise turned around to face me, making sure that I wasn't struggling to follow. Climbing over a fallen tree, she jumped up to the ledge of a small cliff and offered a hand to help me up. It was a bit of trouble getting up there, but with her help I was able to get a good footing. She gave an excited expression while continuing ahead.
We're almost there. There's an abandoned church that rests on the hilltop. That's our secret spot.
I blinked. A church? I hadn't expected that. Something about Elise's grin, though, made it sound like a hidden treasure. Elise started to slow down and walk alongside me at this point.
The church was once used to worship the sea dragon Levia.
A dragon? Do they exist? I have only ever heard dragons from old fairy tales I used to read in the orphanage. But I didn't realize people worshipped them at one point. People worshipped a dragon? I said with curiosity and a bit of excitement.
That's right. Before Estia came to Haven, people in Altivia worshipped Levia, the sea dragon, who watched over sailors and ships. Legends say that the dragon would guide travelers to safety if they found themselves in trouble. Over time, though, people began forgetting about him, looking for the help of other deities that had come to the land. Now Levia's churches are abandoned, but it's a place where we can have fun.
This is the first time I was hearing about Estia, let alone Levia. I wasn't sure what to think at the time. So many questions filled my head. Who is Estia? Why did people forget about the sea dragon? There was an entire history hidden within Altivia that I was oblivious to. To think that there are people and creatures out there in the world that people see as important figures. There was a whole world of gods, dragons, and lost history hidden beneath the streets I thought I knew, and I had barely scratched the surface. We arrived at the Church of Levia just as the sun was finished setting. The church sat on top of the hill that overlooked Altivia, as if the will of Levia still watched over the town that had forgotten it. Nature had claimed the cemetery outside of the church. Under overgrown grass and ivy, tilted headstones leaned. The twisted limbs of a yew tree grew from the very center of a shattered tomb. The old church stood like a wounded remnant of another era, half swallowed by earth, half stoic, slowly disintegrating. From all sides, trees grew, the roots protruding through the stone foundations like fingers of a patient, slow beast that was recovering the things that humans had constructed. The once trod path to this arched doorway was overgrown with wild brambles, making it just wide enough for a curious step. Constructed from large blocks of limestone that had been discolored by centuries of rain and moss, the building itself was hefty. Even though they were largely fallen, its rounded arches stubbornly and dignifiedly supported the nave's weight. The square and robust bell tower, which had previously been a source of pride, swayed slightly, perhaps submitting to the trees. There was no longer a bell ringing from its hollow top. Instead, the wind murmured through the deserted archways where jackdaws and pigeons had taken up residence.
This is the place. My home away from home,
she said with a slight, relaxed tone. I couldn't help but notice the way she said it. It was almost as if she wanted this place to be her home rather than the one in Altivia. Maybe she feels similar to how I did when I needed to get out of the orphanage. In her case, though, she actually had a place to go, while I mostly wandered around where I was. This place was like stepping into a realm lost to time. Within, the atmosphere was chilly and humid, heavy with the scent of something ancient, reminiscent of candle wax that had long burned out. Rays of soft light filtered through the slender gap windows, highlighting floating particles and cobwebs woven between collapsed beams. The stone vault above still arched over in some areas, shadowy and dotted with soot from fires long extinguished. Yet much had fallen into uneven piles of debris and broken pews underneath. The altar positioned at the east end and became a little more than a weathered stone slab, marked by time and topped with dust. Behind it, the ape's curved wall bore remnants of old, I know this word, but I can barely say it. Frescoes. There we go. Frescoes. Bold frescoes. A faded sigil of wings encircling a star. The curve of a serpent-like body. The corner of a painted tome clutched in clawed hands. Rain had infiltrated the damaged roof overhead, transforming much of it into stained patches and peeling painting. The sanctuary railing was mostly missing, and a lone candle holder, twisted and rusted, rested on its side, capturing the dim light like a fading star. Overhead was a partially broken stained glass window, depicting a large serpent-like dragon, with deep blue scales and many wings that trailed the length of its body. As I stared at it, a quiet sense of serenity settled over me, along with a strange, unplaceable familiarity, as if part of me remembered what the rest had forgotten. Saphira, come take a look over here. Elise called us. She dragged a couple of small crates near the altar. The walls around us were lined with parchment drawings, some of Altivia and its winding districts, others of monstrous creatures and strange beasts. A few were covered in swirling symbols and unfamiliar languages that looked like they belonged in another world. I need a drink. All right. What's this one? The circles and letters. I asked, pointing to a faded sheet. Elise glanced over, and her face lit up. That's my magic practice paper. Each one is a different spell I'm trying to learn. Want to try one? I hesitated. Magic seemed to come easily to her, but to me it was still a mystery. The papers looked like gibberish. No clear steps, no logic. I don't know. It looks confusing. Knowing my luck, I'd probably set my hair on fire. That's how you learn. He grinned, pulling one of the papers down and rushing over. Here, this one's easy. It's the healing spell I used on your horn earlier. Right. Curie, you caught it? She nodded and placed the parchment on a small box beside us as we sat. It means cure in Elvish. It can close up cuts or scrapes. Super handy when you're getting roughed up. I gave a small laugh. Sounds useful. So, how do I cast it? Do I say something? Make a hand sign? Elise giggled, holding up her hand in front of her face. Like this. Eyes closed. I mirrored her, confused, only for her to suddenly nudge my hand into my nose with a gentle boop. She burst out laughing. Hey, I said, grinning despite myself. Okay, she said through the laughter. Here's how you actually do it. She lifted her hand again, drawing a faint glowing circle in the air with her finger.
Spells need words and sometimes movement. After you draw the glyph, you say the spell name.
Within the glowing arcane circle, her finger moved with practiced precision, tracing lines between faint shimmering points of light. The pattern began to take shape, a constellation-like design that, when complete, resembled a chalice brimming with liquid starlight. As the final point connected, she slowly extended her hand through the luminous design, as though reaching into another realm to draw forth the spell's power. The glowing symbol faded as she lowered her hand.
Now you try.
I stared at my hand, then slowly tried to mimic her. I traced the air, whispered,
Kirby.
but nothing happened. I frowned and looked back at the parchment.
See? No magic.
At least studied the glyph for a moment, then seemed to think of something. Without warning, she pulled a small pin from her hair and pricked her fingertip. A single bead of red welled up.
At least,
I started, but she shook her head.
Mr. Northam always says that magic comes from the soul, she said softly. The movement, the words, that's just the guide. The power comes from within. So here, feel this. Just a scratch, nothing more.
I hesitated, staring at the tiny cut. She held it towards me expectantly.
Try again, she said, but this time, close your eyes. Clear your mind.
I sighed. Didn't want to disappoint her, so I shut my eyes and focused. Slowly the noise in my head began to quiet. In the stillness, something flickered in the dark behind my eyes. A tiny blue flame, distant but pulsing. I focused on it, and it grew. My eyes snapped open. I traced the pattern once more, whispered the word, and this time, the heat rise faintly through my fingertips. A soft blue glow shimmered against her skin before fading, leaving behind only a faint pink line where the cut had been. She gasped.
You did it! I knew it! The fire on your tail, it glowed too!
I looked down, and sure enough, the flame that usually danced at the tip of my tail now burned brighter, before fading back to normal. Something had happened. Maybe I can do this. Maybe there was something inside me, waiting. Or maybe that fire wasn't even mine at all. Either way, at least we're smiling. And right now, that was enough. She placed the papers with the glyphs back on the wall before returning to me. At least looked up at the ceiling for a brief moment to look at the moonlight coming in from the stained glass window.
Do you want to see something special? What do you mean?
I stood up from the crate and walked towards her. She was looking really calm in that moment, with that smile of hers. It's like she was waiting for this particular moment to show me this.
Follow me.
We both made our way to the second floor of the church. On one section of the building, of the wall, that had collapsed to walk out of, there was a small roof that we walked onto and sat down on. No, nope, almost skipped it. I figured out what she meant by special. From this side of the building, you could see all of Altivia. The shadows of the night blanketed over the town, with the stars acting like tiny beacons overhead. The vast ocean reflected the sky above, showing the vast amount of stars that were in the sky on its surface. Lights coming in from the various homes around town that could be seen at the distance. I could see the orphanage along the shore side of the town. Everything looked so small from this view. For the first time in my life, I was able to see a world beyond the borders of Altivia. An endless ocean that extended beyond what I could see. A world that many would not get to see except Elise and I. Elise dangles her feet off the edge of the roof. She stares into the sky above. She points in the direction in front of her.
See those two stars there?
I looked at where she was pointing. There were two stars that shined brighter than most. The right star was just slightly higher than the other one, while the left one was shining slightly brighter.
My mom used to say that those stars can guide you to a place that never sleeps. A great mountain filled with warmth and light, a place where people never age. She called it her Neverland. She said it was where dreams waited to be remembered.
A look of concern loomed over my face.
What do you mean by... What do you mean she used to?
She took a while to respond to that question. Taking a look away from the sky and lowering her head, she kept her arm close to her, as if she were hugging herself.
My mom died a couple years ago. She went to sleep one night, and
It took a few moments to try to understand what she meant. And I figured it out. My mind was trying to figure out the right words to say.
before she died, she told me a little bit about my father. The only thing that my mom knew was that he lives on that mountain, far from Haven. When I grow up, I want to find that place and meet him. I want to know more about him,
She said as she tried to hold back tears. This confused me. She said her father was the overseer, but now she wants to find him on some mountain?
But didn't you say the overseer at Altivia was your father?
She looks over at her home in Altivia.
He is not my real father. Before she passed away, my mother asked the overseer to look after me. After she was gone, he brought me to Haven. Truth be told, the only reason he agreed to take me in was because I could use magic.
Staring out into the distance, I placed my hands together on my lap. I hadn't realized just how much she'd been carrying. Going from one place to another without knowing where you'll end up felt all too familiar to me. I hope no one would have to experience.
I don't know who my parents are.
Taking out the amulet around my neck, I stared at it.
My parents didn't even want me. Miss Hodgins at the orphanage found me on her doorstep when I was a baby. The only thing they left me was this.
I handed over the amulet to Elise. She took a couple of moments to dry her eyes before looking at it. She was really confused as to what this is.
I never seen anything like it,
She said, handed it back to me. Taking it back, I placed it back around my neck and just looked at it.
There were times where I would just look out the window, wondering when they would ever come back.
I tucked the amulet back into my shirt and took a good look at Elise.
Let's make a promise.
She looked at me, head tilted, caught between confusion and curiosity.
When we grow up, I'll help you find your Neverland. And your father. And we'll find my parents, too. Together we'll find the answers we've been waiting for.
I extended a hand, only my pinky outstretched. She paused, then smiled wide, and looped her pinky with mine.
We'll find our Neverland together.
On that night, under the stars, we made a promise that I would carry for the rest of my life. And that was chapter 3. So the name Azure Neverland comes from this chapter. I chose the name initially, funny enough, because of Saphira, because he's blue, but Azure Neverland could just mean that, like, in this case, it's the setting sun, the darkness, but with the shining lights above guiding the way. And so this is the key thing that is special to Saphira. This is the promise that he is not going to forget anytime soon, and he will carry this even towards the end of the actual D&D game. Like, this this was one of his motivations for continuing on with the story. This promise to find out who he is, who his parents was, who essentially Elise is, like where's this Neverland, and this is something that is all too special to him. And will he end up keeping that promise? Well, we'll have to find out at some point. But I would say this is a very, like I said at the beginning of the stream, this is a very special story to me. This is one of these stories where I can really expand upon these characters, because before, Elise didn't really have much of a character, because she was a backstory character. She was a motivator, and I can't remember for the life of me what the actual story, like the story wordage is, but basically Elise is the motivator for Saphira's story moving forward. Yeah, and well, we see that here because this is their promise. This is their promise that Saphira is going to do his best to keep. He really values this promise to find this mountain, to find out who he is, and to just this is I'm sorry, I don't even know what to say with this, because I'm looking at this picture here that I made for chapter 3, and this really surmises Azure Neverland as a whole, because this is a story about Elise and Saphira, about their connection, their friendship, and finding the answers that they seek in a world that doesn't see them as them. You know, they have each other, and throughout this story you're going to see that, like through good times, through bad times, and what is their future going to hold? Well, like I said, we'll have to find out next time. Now, if you have any questions, now would be the time, because I would love to answer some questions from you guys. You know, now that we've actually read the story and everything. Like, we're only on chapter 3 because I don't have anything else right now. I'll be working on chapter 4 here very soon, but this is going to be a long story. Like, I don't know how many chapters, but there's a lot to get through before we get to the end because of this story between Elise and Saphira. And, like, I'm trying to think, is there any other tidbits that I can say without spoilers? Because I already know what's going to happen at the end of this story. I already know what's going to happen in the future stories, and I know some of you, who are probably still in the chat, also know what's going to happen in the story. So, any questions that you might have, do let me know. You know, I'll try to answer them here on stream if you have any questions about the characters, the setting, pretty much anything. But let's see, how long did these first few chapters take? So I think these first few chapters took me about I want to say a couple of months, because I have been procrastinating a little bit on writing the story, mostly because I've been busy with a lot of other things, because I've got a couple other D&D games that I write for, and I'm also a player in another one. So work kind of keeps me busy, but I do plan on finishing this story over time. I don't know when the final release is going to come out, but if you guys do want to keep this story for yourself, you want to keep this PDF, you can head to our Discord. Here you go. Go ahead, put it in right now. Discord. There you go. There we go. So you could just hop into the Discord. The PDF is right there. If you don't see it initially, you could go to the pinned comments. You could just download it right there, and you could have it, as a reread if you wish to reread it. I'm always looking for feedback with this and with this story, because, just because the story is technically finished doesn't mean I can't really add things. I can add suggestions from you all if you have some critiques or some other ideas of how to make this story better. I do plan on eventually like bringing this out to a wider market, you know. So this is one of the reasons why I'm doing this kind of stream, is because I want to get you guys' feedback, you know. But I would say I know it's going to be a little bit early, but I think this is where we're going to call it for the night. I want to thank each and every one of you for joining me here tonight and listening to me and this story. This has been quite interesting. I really like what I have read in here so far, and I hope you guys do too. Like, if you guys want to see more of this, just let me know in the comments down below. If you have any questions about the story, the setting, and its characters, do let me know either in the Discord or like in or on the YouTube comments, you know, after this VOD has been uploaded. But yeah, that's it, friends. I hope all of you stay classy, stay beautiful, but most importantly, have yourselves a good night.